The galaxy was vast, almost infinite. It stretched across billions of stars, each one home to countless civilizations. Some were ancient and wise, others young and ambitious. Among these civilizations, there was one that no one paid much attention to, a small blue planet orbiting a modest yellow star on the farthest edge of its system. That planet was called Earth, and its inhabitants were known as humans. To most alien races, humans were nothing more than an afterthought. They had barely left their own moon, let alone ventured into deep space. For centuries, they remained invisible, tucked away in their corner of the universe. But invisibility has its advantages. While the rest of the galaxy dismissed them, humans weren't idle. They watched, listened, and learned. Their scientists studied fragments of alien technology that had drifted into their solar system over the years. Engineers reverse-engineered what they could, piecing together knowledge from scraps. And when slowly, quietly, humanity began building something extraordinary, something no one outside their world knew about. It started with whispers among the alien armadas. Strange energy signatures had been detected near human-controlled space. At first, the reports were ignored. After all, how dangerous could a primitive species really be? But as more sightings came in, curiosity turned to concern. A coalition of fleets, led by the dominant Krillian Empire, decided to investigate. These weren't just any ships. They were massive warships bristling with weapons capable of leveling entire planets. Confidence radiated through their ranks. Whatever awaited them, they were sure it wouldn't pose a challenge. The journey to Earth's solar system took weeks. As the Armada approached, tension crackled through the air. Every captain aboard every ship kept their eyes glued to their scanners, waiting for signs of activity. Then, without warning, it appeared. From behind Saturn's icy rings emerged a colossal vessel unlike anything anyone had ever seen. It was enormous, larger than even the biggest dreadnoughts in the Krillian fleet. Its surface shimmered like obsidian, absorbing light instead of reflecting it. Red markings glowed faintly along its hull, pulsing rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. Silence fell across the bridge of every ship in the Armada. No one spoke. Everyone stared at the screen, trying to make sense of what they were seeing. For now, this wasn't just a ship. It was a statement. It loomed there, unmoving yet commanding, exuding an aura of raw power. Fear spread like wildfire. What kind of civilization could build something like this? How had they done it without anyone noticing? For decades, the Krillians had ruled large portions of the galaxy with an iron fist. Their empire spanned hundreds of systems, and their military was unmatched. Yet here they were, frozen in awe and fear at the sight of a single vessel. And questions raced through their minds. Was this some kind of trap? Had humanity been hiding their true strength all along? Or worse, had they allied themselves with another powerful race, borrowing technology to defend their borders? As the mysterious ship moved closer, panic rippled through the Armada. Orders were shouted, weapons armed, shields raised. But still, the ship didn't attack. Instead, it simply hovered there, silent and unyielding. The Krillians tried hailing it, sending signals in every frequency they knew. There was no response. It was as if the humans were letting them stew in their uncertainty, allowing fear to take root before making their next move. Back on Earth, the creators of this ship, the architects of humanity's newfound power, watched silently from their command center. They had spent years preparing for this moment. Every decision, every resource allocation had been made with one goal in mind: survival. They understood that in the cold, unforgiving expanse of space, weakness invited destruction. So they built the Eclipse, a warship designed not only to protect, but also to inspire terror. It wasn't enough to merely defend their planet. They needed to send a message loud and clear. Humanity would not be trifled with. On board the lead Krillian cruiser, the admiral clenched his fists tightly around the edges of his console. He had faced many battles in his career, but none like this. His crew looked to him for guidance, but he had none to offer. All he could do was stare at the monstrous silhouette on the view screen and wonder what horrors it might unleash. The silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional beep of a sensor or the nervous shuffle of boots on metal floors. And then, finally, the Eclipse acted. With a sudden burst of speed, it maneuvered effortlessly between two Krillian destroyers, positioning itself directly in front of the Armada. The movement was fluid, precise, almost graceful. It was as though the ship was taunting them, daring them to make the first move. For the Krillians, it was too much. One captain, unable to bear the tension any longer, ordered his ship to fire. A barrage of plasma bolts streaked toward the Eclipse, but the shots never connected. Before they could reach their target, a shimmering barrier erupted around the human warship, deflecting the attack effortlessly. The Krillians gaped in disbelief. Even their most advanced shielding technology couldn't match what they were witnessing. Whatever this ship was, it was beyond anything they had ever encountered. Word of the incident spread quickly through the Armada. Soldiers whispered nervously to one another, sharing theories and fears. Some claimed the ship was alive, controlled by some form of artificial intelligence. Others believed it drew its power from dark matter or otherworldly forces. Regardless of the truth, one thing was undeniable: humanity had changed. Gone were the days when they could be dismissed as insignificant. Now they were a force to be reckoned with, a force that inspired terror across the stars. As the standoff continued, the Krillians found themselves grappling with a question they had never considered before. What happens when the prey becomes the predator? While the alien Armada hovered in stunned silence near Saturn's orbit, humanity was hard at work behind the scenes. Back on Earth, inside a high-security command center buried deep beneath layers of rock and steel, engineers, scientists, and strategists monitored every move of the Krillian fleet. They had known this day would come eventually. For years, they had prepared for it, studying their enemies, building weapons, and developing strategies to ensure that when the moment arrived, humanity would not only survive, but thrive. The Eclipse wasn't just a ship. It was the culmination of decades of effort. Every bolt, every circuit, every line of code had been crafted with one purpose in mind: to protect Earth from any threat that dared approach. But the story of how humanity reached this point was far more complex than anyone outside the planet could imagine. It began with curiosity, a trait deeply ingrained in human nature. Humans were explorers by instinct, always seeking answers to questions they didn't yet know how to ask. long before the Krillians showed up. The humans had stumbled upon fragments of alien technology floating through space. These pieces were small, sometimes no bigger than a child's toy, but they contained secrets that sparked revolutions in human science. Engineers pored over them, dissecting their components and reverse engineering their designs. Slowly, step by step, humanity began to understand the principles behind faster-than-light travel, energy shields, and advanced weaponry. Each discovery brought them closer to parity with the civilizations that once dismissed them as primitive. But knowledge alone wasn't enough. Building something like the Eclipse required resources that weren't easy to come by. Entire nations set aside their differences and pooled their wealth into a single unified project. Factories that once produced cars and electronics were repurposed to manufacture parts for spacecraft. Mines dug deeper into the Earth's crust to extract rare materials needed for construction. Scientists worked around the clock, fueled by caffeine and determination, knowing that failure wasn't an option. If humanity wanted to stand a chance against the vast empires of the galaxy, they had to be willing to sacrifice everything. And so, the Eclipse took shape. Its design was both functional and symbolic. The sleek black hull absorbed light, making it nearly invisible against the backdrop of space. The glowing red markings along its surface served two purposes. They acted as sensors and communication arrays, while also giving the ship an ominous appearance. To any observer, the Eclipse looked less like a machine and more like a living entity, a predator stalking its prey. This was intentional. Humanity knew that fear could be as powerful a weapon as any cannon or missile. What made the Eclipse truly remarkable, however, was its arsenal. Plasma cannons capable of vaporizing entire fleets. An EMP burst designed to disable enemy ships without firing a single shot. And then there was the pièce de résistance, a dark matter propulsion system that allowed the ship to move with unparalleled speed and agility. No other vessel in the galaxy could match it, not even the most advanced dreadnoughts of the Krillian Empire. As news of the mysterious warship spread among the alien armadas, speculation ran rampant. Some believed the Eclipse was sentient, controlled by an artificial intelligence so advanced it bordered on consciousness. Others thought it drew power from ancient artifacts or forbidden technologies stolen from long-lost civilizations. There were even rumors that the ship itself was alive, grown rather than built. Its organic components fused seamlessly with mechanical ones. None of these theories were true, but they served their purpose. They kept the enemy guessing. For the Krillians, uncertainty bred fear, and their captains huddled in private meetings debating what to do next. Should they attack, retreat, try to communicate? Each option carried risks, and none guaranteed success. Meanwhile, soldiers aboard their ships whispered nervously to one another, sharing stories of humanity's supposed rise. Tales of secret experiments, hidden bases on distant moons, and alliances with rogue factions spread like wildfire. Morale plummeted as doubt crept into the hearts of even the bravest warriors. Back on Earth, leaders watched the chaos unfold with quiet satisfaction. They had anticipated this reaction. Fear was a tool, and they wielded it masterfully. By revealing the Eclipse in such dramatic fashion, they had sent a clear message. Humanity was no longer weak. They had spent centuries being underestimated, ignored, and dismissed. Now they intended to make sure that mistake was never repeated. Yet, despite their confidence, there were moments of reflection within the command center. Some wondered if they had gone too far. Was it wise to provoke such powerful enemies? Could humanity handle the consequences if things went wrong? These doubts were quickly silenced. Survival came first. In a universe where strength determined respect, showing weakness meant certain doom. The eclipse was proof that humanity had earned its place among the stars, and it was ready to defend that position at any cost. As hours turned into days, the standoff continued. The Krillians remained frozen and unwilling to act without clear orders from their leaders. Meanwhile, the humans maintained their position, calm and resolute. They didn't need to rush. Time was on their side. With each passing moment, the fear gripping the alien fleet grew stronger. Soldiers questioned their mission. Commanders second-guessed their strategies. Even the mighty Krillian Empire, which had ruled large portions of the galaxy for centuries, found itself shaken to its core. On board the lead Krillian cruiser, the admiral stared at the viewscreen, his mind racing. He had faced many adversaries in his career, but none like this. This wasn't just a battle, it was a test of wills. The humans weren't attacking, but their mere presence was enough to sow discord and confusion. For the first time in his life, he felt outmatched, not by brute force, but by ingenuity and strategy. Little did he know, this was only the beginning. Humanity had spent years preparing for this moment, and they weren't about to let it slip away. The eclipse was more than a ship. It was a symbol of hope, resilience, and defiance. It represented everything humanity stood for, their ability to adapt, innovate, and overcome. And as the Krillians hesitated, humanity tightened its grip, ready to strike if provoked. In the end, the galaxy would learn one undeniable truth. Underestimating humanity was a grave mistake. Tension crackled through the cold vacuum of space like static electricity. The Krillian Armada, once brimming with confidence, now found itself paralyzed by indecision. Every ship in their fleet remained locked in position, engines idling as captains debated what to do next. On board the lead cruiser, the admiral paced back and forth across the bridge, his boots clicking against the metal floor. His face was a mask of frustration, but beneath it lay something deeper. Fear. Fear of the unknown. Fear of failure. And most of all, fear of the monstrous black warship that loomed silently before them. The eclipse hadn't moved since its initial appearance. It simply hovered there, an unyielding sentinel guarding Earth's borders. Its glowing red markings pulsed rhythmically, almost taunting the Krillians with their steady beat. To the alien fleet, it felt less like a machine and more like a predator sizing up its prey. The silence was deafening. No communication had been established, no demands issued, just the ominous presence of humanity's greatest creation, daring them to make the first move. Inside the command center on Earth, strategists watched the standoff unfold with bated breath. They knew the Krillians were unpredictable. One wrong move could escalate the situation into open conflict. Yet they also understood the importance of maintaining the upper hand. If the aliens sensed even a hint of weakness, they might seize the opportunity to strike. So for now, patience was key. Let the enemy stew in their uncertainty. Let fear take root and spread. Back aboard the Krillian flagship, tempers flared. Some officers argued for immediate action, insisting that retreat would be seen as cowardice. Others urged caution, pointing out the obvious superiority of the human warship. "We don't know what it's capable of," one advisor warned during a heated meeting. "If we provoke it, we risk losing everything." The admiral listened intently, weighing their arguments. He wanted to act decisively, but the stakes were too high. For the first time in his career, he hesitated. Meanwhile, soldiers throughout the fleet whispered nervously to one another. Stories about the eclipse had already begun circulating among the ranks. Some claimed it was haunted, controlled by vengeful spirits of civilizations destroyed by humanity. Others believed it was powered by dark matter or stolen alien technology. A few even speculated that it wasn't a ship at all, but a living creature, grown in secret labs and unleashed upon the galaxy as a weapon of last resort. None of these rumors were true, but they served their purpose, keeping morale low and doubt high. As hours stretched into days, the Krillians grew increasingly desperate. Finally, one bold captain decided to take matters into his own hands. Ignoring orders from the flagship, he commanded his vessel, a sleek, heavily armed destroyer, to approach the eclipse. His plan was simple: intimidate the humans by showing force. If they refused to back down, he would fire a warning shot across their bow. Surely such a display of aggression would remind them of their place in the galaxy. But the humans weren't intimidated. As the destroyer drew closer, the eclipse responded with chilling precision. Without warning, dozens of small drones erupted from hidden compartments along its hull. Sleek and silent, they swarmed toward the approaching ship like insects drawn to light. Before the Krillian crew could react, the drones unleashed a barrage of EMP bursts, targeting the destroyer's systems. Within seconds, the ship's engines sputtered and died. Lights flickered and went out. Communication channels fell silent. The once proud destroyer drifted helplessly in space, reduced to little more than a floating hulk. News of the incident spread quickly through the Armada. A panic rippled across the fleet as soldiers realized the implications. If the eclipse could disable one of their most advanced ships so effortlessly, what chance did the rest of them have? Captains scrambled to recalibrate their tactics, but no solution seemed viable. Attacking head-on was suicide. Retreating meant admitting defeat, and attempting diplomacy carried its own risks. Who knew how the humans would respond? On Earth, with the creators of the eclipse watched the chaos unfold with quiet satisfaction. This was exactly what they had hoped for. By demonstrating their power without firing a single shot, they had sent a clear message. Humanity was not to be trifled with. Every drone deployed, every system disabled, reinforced the idea that resistance was futile. Yet despite their success, there was no celebration in the command center. Instead, there was a sense of grim determination. They had come too far to let arrogance cloud their judgment. Victory wasn't guaranteed, not yet. As the days passed, the standoff continued. The Krillians maintained their positions, unwilling to leave but equally reluctant to engage. Their leaders convened emergency meetings, debating whether to press forward or withdraw entirely. Some factions pushed for retaliation, arguing that surrendering to such a small, insignificant species would undermine their authority. But cooler heads prevailed. The risks outweighed the potential rewards. Attacking the eclipse could result in catastrophic losses and possibly even the destruction of their entire fleet. For the humans, this period of waiting was both nerve-wracking and exhilarating. They knew they held the advantage, but they also understood the fragility of their position. One misstep could shatter the delicate balance they had created. So they waited, monitoring every movement of the alien fleet, ready to respond at a moment's notice. And then finally it happened. A signal came through. One of the Krillian ships was attempting to establish contact. At first, the transmission was garbled, filled with static and interference. But slowly, a voice emerged, speaking in broken English. "This is Krillian Command. We wish to talk." The humans exchanged glances, unsure whether to trust the message. Was this a genuine attempt at diplomacy or a trick to buy time? After a brief discussion, they decided to respond. Using the Eclipse's communication array, they broadcast a holographic projection directly to the lead Krillian cruiser. The image depicted a lone figure clad in a simple uniform, standing tall and resolute against a backdrop of stars. Though the figure's features were obscured, their tone was firm and commanding. "We are humanity," the figure declared, their voice echoing through the cruiser's speakers. "You have entered our territory without permission. Withdraw immediately, or face the consequences." The words hung heavy in the air, leaving the Krillians stunned. Never before had they encountered such audacity from anyone, let alone a species they had long dismissed as primitive. For a moment, silence reigned. Then, reluctantly, the admiral nodded to his communications officer. "Understood," he replied. "We will consider your terms." It was a small victory, but a significant one. The Krillians had backed down, for now. Humanity had proven that it was no longer a passive observer in the galactic arena. It was a player, capable of standing toe-to-toe with even the most powerful empires. And though the standoff wasn't over, the tide had shifted. Fear, once a tool used against humanity, was now their greatest ally. In the end, the eclipse remained where it was, an immovable force guarding Earth's borders. The Krillians lingered nearby, their movements cautious and deliberate. Both sides waited, each wondering what the other would do next. But one thing was certain: the galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. The holographic figure projected from the eclipse had spoken with authority, its words cutting through the tension like a blade. "Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." It was a simple message, but one that carried immense weight. For the Krillians, it was both a warning and a challenge. Now, they had come to Earth's solar system expecting to assert dominance over a primitive species, only to find themselves staring down the barrel of humanity's greatest achievement. A warship so advanced it seemed almost otherworldly. On board the lead Krillian cruiser, the admiral sat in stunned silence. His mind raced as he replayed the transmission over and over again. The voice was calm yet firm, leaving no room for misinterpretation. Humanity wasn't bluffing. They were issuing an ultimatum. A retreat now, or suffer the consequences. But what exactly were those consequences? What horrors did this mysterious ship, the Eclipse, have in store for them? Doubts gnawed at the admiral's resolve. He had spent decades commanding fleets, leading campaigns across the galaxy. Never once had he encountered a foe like this. The humans weren't just defending themselves, they were dictating terms. And worse, they had the means to enforce them. The memory of the disabled destroyer haunted him. One moment, it had been a proud vessel of the Krillian Empire. The next, it was little more than a floating husk, its crew stranded and powerless. If the Eclipse could do that to one ship, what could it do to an entire fleet? As the hours dragged on, the Krillians found themselves trapped in a web of indecision. Some officers argued for retreat, insisting that further aggression would only lead to disaster. Others pushed for retaliation, claiming that backing down would make the empire look weak. The debate raged on, voices rising in frustration as tempers flared. In the end, cooler heads prevailed, but not without resistance. A decision was made. They would send envoys to negotiate with the humans. Perhaps diplomacy could salvage what remained of their mission. The envoys arrived aboard a small transport vessel escorted by two heavily armed cruisers. As they approached the Eclipse, their nerves were stretched taut. Every movement of the massive warship sent shivers down their spines. Its black hull absorbed light, making it seem larger than life. The glowing red markings pulsed rhythmically, almost hypnotic in their intensity. To the envoys, it felt less like a machine and more like a living entity, a predator watching its prey. When the transport docked with the Eclipse, the envoys were greeted not by flesh and blood humans, but by another holographic projection. This time, the figure stood against a backdrop of Earth itself, a blue and white orb suspended in the void of space. Behind it, continents and oceans shimmered faintly, a reminder of what the humans were fighting to protect. The figure spoke again, its tone unchanged. Calm, measured, unyielding. "You have entered our territory without permission," it repeated. "Your actions will not be tolerated. Withdraw your forces immediately, or we will take action to ensure your compliance." The envoys exchanged uneasy glances. They had expected hostility, perhaps even arrogance. What they hadn't anticipated was the sheer confidence radiating from the human representative. There was no pleading, no desperation, just a quiet certainty that humanity held all the cards, and they knew it. Desperate to buy time, the envoys tried to reason with the figure. "We mean no harm," one of them said, his voice trembling slightly. Our mission was one of exploration, not conquest. We seek only to understand your people." The response was immediate and devastating. "Understanding is earned, not given," the figure replied. "Your empire has ruled the galaxy through fear and intimidation. You underestimate those you deem weaker, exploiting them for your own gain. Humanity will not tolerate such behavior within our borders." The words struck a nerve. The Krillians prided themselves on their strength and their ability to dominate lesser civilizations. Yet here they were, being lectured by a species they had dismissed as insignificant. Humiliation burned in their chests, but they dared not show it. Instead, they nodded silently, absorbing the rebuke. To drive the point home, the humans decided to provide a demonstration of the Eclipse's capabilities. Using the ship's main cannons, they targeted a nearby asteroid field, a cluster of rocky debris drifting aimlessly through space. At first, nothing happened. Then, with a sudden burst of energy, beams of concentrated plasma erupted from the warship's weapons arrays. The asteroids disintegrated instantly, reduced to fine dust that scattered into the void. The envoys watched in stunned silence as the display unfolded before their eyes. Each shot was precise, calculated, leaving no trace of the original formations. It was a breathtaking spectacle, but also a terrifying one. The implications were clear. If the eclipse could obliterate an entire asteroid field with such ease, what could it do to a fleet of ships? Back aboard their transport, the envoys struggled to process what they had witnessed. Fear gripped them, twisting their thoughts into knots. How could they possibly negotiate with a species capable of wielding such power? Their mission had been doomed from the start, and now they were paying the price for underestimating humanity. Meanwhile, way aboard the Krillian flagship, the admiral received the report with growing dread. The envoys confirmed everything he had feared. The humans were not bluffing. Their technology was far beyond anything the Krillians possessed. Worse still, they had no qualms about using it to defend their planet. Any attempt to retaliate would result in catastrophic losses and possibly even the destruction of the entire Armada. Faced with this grim reality, the admiral made the hardest decision of his career, and he ordered the fleet to withdraw. It was a bitter pill to swallow, but there was no alternative. Continuing the mission would only lead to disaster. Reluctantly, the captains obeyed, steering their ships away from Earth's solar system. As the Krillian Armada retreated, the eclipse remained where it was, watching silently as its enemies disappeared into the distance. On Earth, celebrations erupted in the command center. Scientists cheered, engineers hugged one another, and strategists allowed themselves a rare moment of triumph. They had done it. Against all odds, humanity had stood up to one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy and won. But amidst the jubilation, there were whispers of caution. Not everyone shared in the euphoria. Some worried that the use of overwhelming force might come back to haunt them. By instilling fear in the hearts of their enemies, they had secured peace, for now. But fear was a double-edged sword. It could inspire respect. Yes, but it could also breed resentment. And resentment, if left unchecked, could lead to revenge. For the humans, the victory was bittersweet. They had proven themselves capable of defending their planet, but at what cost? The galaxy now viewed them differently, not as a primitive species to be ignored, but as a formidable force to be reckoned with. Whether this newfound reputation would bring stability or chaos remained to be seen. In the end, the eclipse returned to its position near Saturn's rings, resuming its role as humanity's silent guardian. The standoff was over, but the lessons learned would linger long after the Krillians had vanished into the depths of space. Humanity had taken its first step onto the galactic stage, and it had done so with a bang. The withdrawal of the Krillian Armada marked a turning point, not just for humanity, but for the entire galaxy. News of the eclipse's actions traveled faster than light itself, carried by subspace transmissions and whispered conversations in every corner of known space. Civilizations that had once dismissed Earth as an insignificant speck on the galactic map now spoke of it with awe and fear. Humanity, once considered weak and primitive, had proven itself to be anything but. The image of the massive black warship loomed large in the minds of leaders, soldiers, and citizens alike. It was no longer just a ship. It was a symbol, a warning to anyone who dared underestimate humanity. On Earth, celebrations erupted across continents. Streets were filled with cheering crowds, waving flags and chanting slogans. Fireworks lit up the night sky, painting it with bursts of color. In cities and villages, people gathered around televisions and radios, listening to speeches from their leaders. Today, one such leader declared, "We have shown the galaxy what humanity is capable of. That we are no longer bystanders, we are players, and we will not be pushed around." But behind closed doors, the mood was more subdued. Inside the command center where the Eclipse had been conceived and built, engineers and strategists exchanged quiet glances. They knew better than anyone the cost of their victory. Years of effort, billions of resources, countless sacrifices, all poured into creating a single vessel capable of standing toe-to-toe with the most powerful empires in the galaxy. As the Eclipse had delivered on its promise, but at what price? Has it gone too far? Would this newfound reputation bring peace or provoke retaliation? For the scientists who had worked tirelessly to reverse engineer alien technology, there was pride, but also unease. They had unlocked secrets that defied explanation, pushing the boundaries of human knowledge further than ever before. Yet they couldn't shake the feeling that they were playing with forces beyond their control. And what if their creations fell into the wrong hands? What if humanity's enemies found ways to counter them? These questions lingered in their minds, unspoken but impossible to ignore. Meanwhile, ordinary citizens began to see themselves differently. For decades, humanity had looked up at the stars and wondered if they were alone. Now they gazed outward with a sense of purpose and power. The Eclipse wasn't just a machine. It represented something greater. It embodied humanity's resilience, the creativity and determination to survive against all odds. People started talking about exploration, colonization, and even expansion into deep space. Dreams that had once seemed impossible now felt within reach. Yet not everyone shared in the optimism. Critics emerged, questioning whether humanity was ready for the responsibilities that came with galactic prominence. Some argued that the use of overwhelming force would only invite hostility. Others pointed out that fear might keep enemies at bay for now, but it could also sow seeds of resentment. Empires like the Krillians didn't take defeat lightly. Sooner or later, they would seek revenge, and when they did, humanity needed to be prepared. Back aboard the Krillian flagship, the admiral sat alone in his quarters, staring at the stars through the viewport. His mind replayed the events of the past weeks, the standoff, the disabled destroyer, the humiliating retreat. Each memory stung like salt in a wound. He had spent his entire career building the Krillian Empire's reputation as an unstoppable force. Now, thanks to a single human warship, that reputation lay in tatters. His thoughts turned to the envoys who had returned from their encounter with the Eclipse. Their report had painted a vivid picture of humanity's resolve. The holographic figure, the asteroid demonstration, the ultimatum, it all pointed to one undeniable truth. Humanity was no longer a species to be trifled with. They had risen from obscurity to become a force capable of challenging even the mightiest empires. And they had done so not through brute strength, but through ingenuity and strategy. As word of the incident spread throughout the Krillian Empire, reactions varied. Some called for immediate retaliation, demanding that the humans be punished for their insolence. Others advocated caution, warning that attacking the eclipse head-on would result in catastrophic losses. Debates raged in council chambers and war rooms, each faction vying for influence. In the end, cooler heads prevailed, but barely. The decision was made to avoid direct confrontation, for now. Instead, the Empire would focus on rebuilding its fleet, developing new technologies, and finding ways to counter humanity's advantages. But the damage had already been done. The Krillians weren't the only ones watching. Across the galaxy, other civilizations took note of humanity's rise. Some saw it as an opportunity. Smaller, weaker species reached out to Earth, seeking alliances and protection. Others viewed humanity as a threat, fearing that their newfound power would upset the delicate balance of power in the galaxy. Diplomatic channels buzzed with activity as ambassadors scrambled to assess the situation. For humanity, this sudden influx of attention was both a blessing and a curse. On one hand, it opened doors to new possibilities, trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and partnerships that could accelerate their development. On the other hand, it brought scrutiny. Every move they made was analyzed, dissected, and debated. Allies became cautious, unsure how far humanity's ambitions extended. Enemies grew bolder, testing the limits of Earth's defenses. Through it all, the eclipse remained stationed at the edge of Earth's solar system, a silent guardian watching over humanity's fragile domain. Its presence served as a constant reminder of what humanity had achieved and what it was willing to do to protect itself. To some, it was a source of pride. To others, it was a cause for concern. But to everyone, it was undeniable proof that humanity had changed. In the months that followed, life on Earth began to shift. Governments invested heavily in space exploration, pouring resources into building new ships, satellites, and colonies. Scientists raced to unlock the secrets of dark matter and faster-than-light travel, hoping to replicate the success of the eclipse. Artists and writers drew inspiration from humanity's triumph, creating stories and paintings that captured the spirit of resilience and defiance. Humanity had always been dreamers, but now they were dreamers with the means to turn those dreams into reality. Yet amidst the progress, there were moments of reflection. Leaders gathered in private meetings, discussing the ethical implications of their newfound power. Was it right to instill fear in the hearts of others? Could they justify using overwhelming force to secure peace? These questions weighed heavily on their minds, shaping the decisions they made moving forward. In the end, humanity's legacy was written in the stars. The eclipse had sent a message loud and clear. Earth was no longer a passive observer in the galactic arena. It was a player, Why capable of standing toe-to-toe with even the most powerful empires. Whether this newfound status brought stability or chaos remained to be seen. But one thing was certain: the galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. And so the story of the eclipse became legend, a tale told and retold in every corner of the universe. It was a story of courage, ingenuity, and survival. A story of how a small blue planet, tucked away in a remote corner of the galaxy, rose to challenge the greatest powers in existence and won.